Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming on. We are really excited. I know there are a lot of folks who are hopping onto the webinar right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining, for everybody hopping in. My name is Christina Shortino, and I'm the Resource Programs Manager here with CITE. I'm joined by Crystal Ibarra with CITE, who's our Resource Programs Technician. And we're excited to share with you, by way of our partners with Microsoft and SoftChoice, some exciting information. I do know, just for housekeeping notes, that contact information, we will be sending notes by way of the chat. If you have any questions, please enter them there, and we will be sure to take a look at and address and get back to you. Also, do know that a recording of this webinar is going to be available within a week, generally, after this presentation. So we look forward to sharing. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to William Miller, Sales Leader with SoftChoice.
Thank you very much, Christina, and thank you all for joining today. I'm really excited to have CITE and Microsoft on. We have three very timely topics to go through, but I do want to highlight that any questions that you have, whether it's on this webinar or afterwards, you can always reach this entire team at CAMSA@softchoice.com. I will put that in the chat here in a moment, including my contact details. So any feedback on the webinar, any questions that you have, maybe with your Microsoft environment or technologies you want to explore, reach out to that alias or myself directly, and happy to get you with the right folks on our side and Microsoft and CITE. So with that, I will put that contact detail in the chat, but I will pass it over to Diana Simmons at Microsoft to give us an introduction to our speakers today.
Yes, thank you so much, Will, and thank you for the CITE team for hosting and organizing this webinar. My name is Diana Simmons, and I'm the Microsoft account executive that support all of our K12 school districts here in California, including all of the ones that purchase their Microsoft licensing through our CAMSA program. I will drop my contact information in the chat if anyone has any questions or follow-ups about your Microsoft contract after this call, but we're really excited today to have you all here. And our session today is all going to be about Microsoft Intune, Windows 11, and AI, and Microsoft 365 Copilot, and our PCs. So we heard a lot of great feedback at the CITE conference that these topics were really top of mind for our districts. So we'll explore best practices for managing some of the school devices and how do you integrate AI and the tools that we have as well. With that, I have our awesome specialist on the call today. So Richard Balsley, who's our senior technical specialist, will be talking about Intune. We have Dale, who is our Windows expert, Andre, who is our Copilot expert, and Melanie, who is our Surface specialist. So some really talented, smart folks to talk through these topics today. Please feel free to drop any questions as we're dialoguing in the chat, and we'll make sure we get those addressed. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Richard to kick things off.
Hey everyone, I'm Richard Balsley. Let me get everything shared out here and we'll get started. Actually, let me do this through PowerPoint Live, so you can click the links.
Crystal or Christina, did you want me to record or one of you recording?
It's already set up to be recorded.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes.
PowerPoint. The deck's not showing up PowerPoint Live. Okay, and we'll just share regular. All right. All right, perfect. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. As I mentioned, my name is Richard Balsley. If you were at CITE, the CITE conference in San Diego back in November, you probably have seen most of this presentation, at least what I'm about to present. You probably didn't see what our other presenters are going to present because they didn't present those topics. But for my session, you'll probably see that a lot of this is rehash. If you want access to this deck, QR code here will get you access to the deck. I can post a link to it after I'm done presenting into the chat. But you'll have access to the deck. There's a ton of links that will take you to all sorts of different resources. I can't teach Intune in an hour. It's going to take much longer than that. But there's a lot of things that we've already recorded previously that you'll have access to that you can go and review if you need that. So with that said, what we'll cover today, a lot of frequently asked questions. So my team is I have a national team that focuses on all of education, so K12, higher ed, academic medicals, and we get lots of questions about Intune, whether it's managing student devices, faculty, staff, kiosks, labs, all sorts of different questions about how do we effectively manage Windows within our environment today. And so a lot of times it's just like, what does good look like? What are the best practices? What are the things that I should be focusing on for the different scenarios that I have in my environment? And so we're going to go through a demo video that I've recorded about what good really does look like and how you can make Windows operate the way you want it to. So students aren't installing things they shouldn't be installing, applications that you want to self-service to your end users. They can easily go and just go pick the app they want to install and install it, things like that. We'll also go through how do we enroll our devices. So today, a lot of times when customers are first coming to Intune, they have devices that are already joined to the domain, and they just want to get those things managed. They don't want to reimage them. They don't want to do anything additional to the device itself. They just want to, from a central point of view, they want to get that device into Intune. And so how do we do that for that existing domain joined machine? But then there's also new machines. You're buying new devices for device refreshes every few years, maybe even every year. You might have a yearly refresh cycle to get new devices into the organization. How do we get those new devices in as well? And so there's different ways to handle this, and we'll talk about what we see that works the best with our education customers. We then go through the different types of joins. So if you've been doing this for a while, you probably are familiar with Azure Active Directory. We've renamed that to Entra ID. And so we have this Entra join, we have Entra hybrid join, we have Entra register. What's the difference between all of these things? Because you'll see these as you start going through and try to enroll different devices. You're going to see these terms, and so you need to understand what these all mean. And then from a group policy perspective, a lot of us have had group policy for 20 plus years, going back to Windows 2000. Maybe some of you actually stood up your very first domain controller for the school district that you're in. And you probably have group policies that are probably 20 years old that no one's touched and no one wants to touch because they're afraid of what's going to happen if they do touch them. So should we migrate all of those over into Intune? And the simple answer is no, we don't want to do that. We'll talk about why that is. Also, your users, they can't download applications from the company portal. So some of you guys might already be along your Intune journey today, but you might find situations where you're using this application called the company portal, and that's where your users are supposed to go to self-service applications and install them. But I can't download them. Why can't they do that? What's causing that problem? We'll talk a bit about what that is. And then we always get this question, like, what policies should I configure? Like, all this stuff is too confusing. I have so many different use cases within my school district. I've got student devices, I got faculty devices, I have these carts, I have kiosks, I have all this stuff, but I don't know what policies to configure. Group policy had it all in one format, and then now you have this thing in Intune, and it's all completely different over here. Can you just tell me what to configure to make my life easier? And we've got a solution for that, and we'll talk a bit about that. But then when I go to Intune, Microsoft, you're telling me that MDT doesn't support Windows 11. And you're also telling me that if I leave Configuration Manager, which some of you guys might have, I don't have anything to image with in Intune. So what do I do about imaging? How do I image these devices if I've got a device that a student breaks, or maybe it doesn't boot anymore? How do I recover that device? And we'll talk about that later. So what we're not going to cover though is Intune 101. Intune 101, we've already did a number of sessions on Intune 101 and 201 and 301. We've also had a session on Azure Active Directory and hybrid identities. So in this deck, you'll have access to those 4 recordings. Each of them are about like 90 minutes to 2 hours long. So they're very long and in-depth recordings about how to really get started with going cloud native with Windows endpoints. And so those sessions are where you would want to go for the 101 types of discussions. So with that, let's go into the device demo. Stop sharing here. Get the recording. And we'll reshare. Okay, so we've got a video here, and just to set the stage, this is I believe it's a Surface laptop Go device. I recorded this back a couple of years ago, but the content is pretty much the same. Nothing's really changed here for this. But it's a Surface Laptop Go running Windows 11, and the device is enrolled into Autopilot. If you don't know what Autopilot is, we'll explain what that is in a bit. If you're familiar with Apple enrollment, Apple has Apple Device Enrollment, ADE, formerly known as DEP. Autopilot is our form of that. So if you just want to equate those two things. So we'll kick the video off, and there's going to be some flickering because of how the camera operates. But what you'll see here is you'll see that this device is just starting to, it's checking for updates. It's starting its enrollment into Microsoft Intune. This is going through what's called Autopilot. And specifically, there's a mode in Autopilot called Autopilot Self-Deploy. And so with the self-deploy,
This is the bigger version?
is the share still going?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, it is. Okay, sorry, just got rid of the bar at the top. So with Autopilot and self-deploy, what this means is that your user doesn't have to sign in with any credentials for the enrollment to start. As long as there's a network connection to the device, we just immediately download the Autopilot profile, and the Autopilot profile says, okay, go enroll into Intune and start getting all the stuff that you've deployed from Intune. So your policies, settings, applications, things like that. And so what we're seeing here is the device is being set up for work or school, and we are enrolled into your mobile device management tool. In this case, it's Microsoft Intune. And then now what we're doing is we're going through and installing our settings and our applications that have been deployed from Intune. And this process, depending on what you're deploying, can take about 5 to 10 minutes. Could take a little bit longer if you've got really large applications.
It has different departments, and each department has.
And once it's done, we end up at the logon screen. And so here at the logon screen, I can type in my credentials.
You have to have the number.
Once I type my credentials in, I'll be into the OS, and it's going to go through the first run experience. So it's going to set up your user profile, which generally takes a little bit of time. I've sped this video up a bit, so we don't have to sit and wait to watch that. But once we get to the desktop, this is where we'll see all the stuff that Intune has deployed is going to start to configure. So things like OneDrive, like the first thing here, when I'm hovering over the OneDrive icon right now, that OneDrive icon by default isn't configured. So Intune is going to deploy the OneDrive settings. But we'll also see as we scroll through the start menu is that a lot of the built-in applications like Xbox and Skype and Solitaire and all the stuff that we don't want students to have access to, we've removed all that. And we've done that through a script in Intune. So Intune is deploying the script, removing all the apps that we don't want to see. And when we open up the File Explorer, now we see that OneDrive has already been pre-configured through Intune. It was all done silently, so the end user doesn't have to type in any credentials. They don't have to do anything to get OneDrive set up. It's just immediately set up for them as soon as they sign in. And then next, what we're doing is we're opening up the company portal app. And so the company portal app is that application I mentioned at the beginning that allows us to do self-service installation of applications. And so what you'll see here is I've published a number of applications and I made them available to my student user. So my student can go and select Adobe Acrobat Reader. They'll click the install button, and then it'll go ahead and download from Intune and install the Adobe Reader application. And then once it's been installed, we can go ahead and open it, just validate that it works. And then we're done. We can do this with just about any application that the user might need access to. Next, we're going to take a look at the system application, just look at system settings. And this just basically shows us that all of our policies have been assigned. Unfortunately, the way that we show policies, it's not very user-friendly. A lot of weird characters and things like that. I mean, you could tell that an engineer kind of designed this and doesn't really do this on a day-to-day basis to understand what people are actually looking at. But we can go and see that our policies have been set. And so next what we're going to do is we're going to look at Edge. And so, and I know a lot of you guys are probably using Chrome as your browser. And with Chrome, we can also deploy policies through Edge for Chrome. But with Edge, what we've done here is we've made it so that there's no first run experience. There's no questions or things that the end user has to type in and answer. We just immediately get the device or the browser configured for the user. Now, what you're seeing me do here is I'm going through and I'm downloading an application called Discord. So as we all know, even some of us might use Discord on a daily basis, but our kids definitely use Discord quite a bit. And generally what we want to do is we want to prevent them from being able to run applications like Discord. And so what we've done here is we've downloaded Discord, but when the student tries to run it, they can't. It says that they have to go and get their applications from the Microsoft Store. So we give them a link, they can go to the Microsoft Store, but they can't do that either because we blocked the Microsoft Store. And so what you'll see here in a minute is that this, I think the screen should just show that the store has been blocked. There it goes. And now we can't get access to this application at all. And so what you'll also notice here is there's the mark of the web. If you've heard of that term, mark of the web, anytime you download something from the web, we generally block you from installing that application or running it. What we've also said as a policy so that you can't even get around that. So we prevented it from being able to install. Well, there's also other applications that kids like to install to get around our content filters, things like Siphon Filter. There's also Siphon for Windows, it's a VPN client. There's a number of these different VPNs that are out there. Siphon's just one that I've heard a lot of people or a lot of kids use. And so we try to run that, that's blocked as well. And so if you're downloading these applications, if you're running them from USB drives, so a kid might download something from home, bring it to the school device and try to run it there. All of these applications, we can block them from running. And so what this allows us to do is we can get a device configured for a student. It doesn't have to just be for students. We can also do the same thing for faculty and staff. We can do this for our labs. But this basically makes it so that the kids can't install the things that we generally are trying to block. And so some of you have probably been playing the app locker whack-a-mole game, as I like to call it, where someone tells you, oh, kids are trying to run this app. And so you go and create an app locker policy and you block it. But then they try to run something else and then you block it. And so you keep playing this game going back and forth with what they're trying to run. And so with a situation like this, we can easily do that without you having to create some blacklist of applications where they can't run, this long list of things. So with that, let's go back into the deck and we'll continue the presentation. Okay, so for those that don't know what Intune is our Microsoft. It's our mobile device management solution. So it does Windows management, mobile endpoints, endpoint security. I'm primarily covering Windows, that's my specialty, but we have Mac OS, Android, iOS, Linux. We can connect to Config Manager using something called co-management. And so Intune will manage all of those platforms. So if you have Mac and iOS devices, we actually see a lot of customers today, they're moving their Mac and iOS devices over to Intune for cost savings measures. They're trying to consolidate their management tools into one tool instead of having to go to different tools and do different things. So if that's something that's interesting to you, then you can also do that with Microsoft Intune. Okay, so let's talk about device identity. So with device identity, I mentioned at the top, we have these things called intra-joined, intra-hybrid joined. Which one of these should I choose? And the reality is that you're going to choose both. And the reason you're going to do that is because when you start off, you're going to start off with a bunch of devices that are most likely joined to a domain. And so if we focus on the left-hand side here, this intra-hybrid joined scenario. In the intra-hybrid joined scenario, you have a device that is joined to your on-premises Active Directory, and then we register or enroll it up to Entra ID. And in that situation, the device is hybrid joined. And this is applicable to Windows current and down-level client server. So basically what that means is that Windows 10, Windows 11, and Windows Server can all be managed through hybrid joined scenarios. And a join happens automatically. It's controlled by Entra Connect or Azure Active Directory Connect. You install that tool on a Windows server on premises. You can install it on your domain controller if you want. You can install it on any random server. But that will join or that will synchronize your objects from on premises up to Entra. We manage this all through GPO, and we use co-management for cloud value. If you're using Config Manager, then you can use co-management along with hybrid join to get your devices up to date. So that's the hybrid join piece. This is where most people start. But the Entra join piece, that's where everyone is moving. Microsoft recommends people to go, but it's also where we're just seeing a lot of customers adopt it now with their brand new devices. They don't generally re-image all the old stuff that's on the domain to get it Entra joined. If you're a smaller organization, a smaller district, you might have the people to do that. But if you're much larger with thousands of devices, you probably don't have the IT team to go and grab every device, re-image it, and then Entra join it. But with an Entra join device, it's joined directly to the cloud. It's joined directly to Entra. It does not communicate back to your on-premises Active Directory. So in that scenario, what this means is that Entra is the identity provider. Whereas in the hybrid join scenario, the identity provider is actually your on-premises Active Directory. And so what that means is that group policies actually take precedence for the hybrid join scenario. So all of your group policies still apply. Whereas in the Entra join scenario, because the device isn't connected to the domain, it has no idea about your group policies. So in that scenario, your policies must come from Intune or a third-party MDM if you're using that. So we're joined to Entra, but we can still access our on-premises resources. So because our identity is synchronized up to Entra, and most of you probably have already done this today, your identity is already up there. And so because you have a hybrid identity, because it's synchronized from on-prem, it's up in the cloud, that identity allows me to get access to things on-prem. So I can get access to file shares. I can get access to printers. I can get access to things that require my identity that are on premises, applications that require my identity. I can still access those things, even though the device is joined to Entra. So I'm not limited to just the things in the cloud if I join that device to Entra. And then on the left-hand side here, we have these personal device enrollments, this thing called Entra Register. Now, if you go into your Azure Active Directory portal, or if you go to your Entra portal, go to entra.microsoft.com. If you've never looked at this before, most of you probably have, because we've been doing this for a long time now. But if you've never looked at this before, you start going there, you look at your devices, and you start to see all these devices. You have no idea what they are. They have these random names. Could be like Mikey's PC or someone's gaming desktop, or who knows. You see all these computers that are just listed in here. You have no idea what they are. But what's happening in that scenario, when you see all these machines, is that they're getting registered to Entra, and they're personal machines from your users. And what's happening is that they're probably trying to access they're trying to access a resource, maybe email. Most likely it's email. They're trying to get access to their email, and so they'll open up Outlook. They'll type in their work or school account, and then Windows will ask them, "Hey, do you want to add this account to your device?" It'll make it a lot easier to sign into things using single sign-on and all this other stuff. And so they get this big window that comes up, and they click, "Yeah, okay, sure, whatever. I just want my email." So they do that, and that device then gets registered into your tenant. And now everyone just sees like thousands of these machines just show up, and you have no idea what they are. And the reason we do this is because this allows you to use something called conditional access. And conditional access, if you're not familiar with it, it allows you to create a policy that can control who can get access to what resources from any device. And so when you hear these terms like zero trust, this is what we're talking about. This is just one form of that, where we can say, we don't trust this device. So I'm going to create a conditional access policy that can tie into Intune to look at the security of that device. Does it have the latest Defender definitions for antivirus? Is it BitLocker encrypted? There's a number of different things that you can set for your compliance policy that ties into conditional access. So if you have BYOD and you've got all these end users that are connecting from their home over the internet on these machines that you don't manage, we can check all of these different things to say, okay, if you want access, you must have BitLocker, you must have Defender, you must have whatever XYZ security product that we're deploying today. You must have all of these things. And if you do, then you can connect and you can access your email. And so that's why you see those devices registered. It's not just like, oh my God, Microsoft is opening up this big can of worms and it's causing us some major problems. It's really so that you can actually see that, oh my gosh, all these people are trying to get in here and access things. We need to have a BYOD policy. We need to make sure that we're controlling access to our data and using the tools and controls that Microsoft provides to make sure that people have the access that they need, and we're doing it in a secure manner. Okay, so we've talked about Entra join, we've talked about Entra hybrid join, we've talked about the registration for BYOD. How do we enroll these devices using those methods? So for the existing devices, we'll work on that first. We have domain joined only. So this is where most people start. You've got all of your computers that have been joined to the domain for 20 years, but now we want to manage things in the cloud. So how do we get these things into Intune? Well, the first thing you need to do is we need to set up Entra hybrid join. So you most likely have installed Azure Active Directory Connect or Entra. We've renamed it now to Entra Connect or something like that. You've probably installed that already to synchronize user identities to get access to Office 365. most organizations have already done this. It's been 10 plus years that people have had the ability to do this, even longer. You've probably done that already. What you may not have done though is the hybrid join part. There's a checkbox in there. We'll look at that here in a sec. You check the box. It'll then start to enroll the organizational units that you've specified into Entra. So you'll do that. And then there's also a GPO that you need to turn on for Intune automatic enrollment. We'll see screenshots of what this all looks like here in a minute. Then we have domain join with config manager. So for those of you that are using config manager, you still need to set up hybrid join through Entra Connect, but then you'll use co-management to control the enrollment of the devices. And so we've got that as well. And then we have unmanaged. So I know a lot of school districts have a lot of workgroup machines that aren't joined to a domain at all. Some of the largest districts, some of the smallest districts, it's all over the place in terms of a lot of these unmanaged machines that you might have a shared user account. Sometimes it's an admin user account, but that account is shared amongst a bunch of different people, and they sign into the machine, they do their thing, but the machine's not managed at all. You have no control over it. How do we get those devices into Intune? And so what I generally recommend is you can use a what's called a provisioning package that gets created through a tool called Windows Configuration Designer. So you'll use Windows Configuration Designer, create a provisioning package, and then that'll enroll you into Entra using Entra Join. But it does require someone to actually touch the device because it's kind of on its own island. It's not managed at all. So unless you're remoting into it, and you might use remote desktop or something, and then sign into it, using the local credentials that you know what they are, you could do that. But generally speaking, you basically just take this provisioning package, put it on a USB stick, and just go to each device and just run that package to enroll it. But one thing we don't recommend you do is we don't recommend you go into Windows settings and start manually adding work or school accounts. And the reason for this is because this enrolls the devices as personal enrollments, which is no different than that registration scenario I just mentioned in the previous slide where we're registering bring your own device. If you go into settings and you just start adding a work or school account, you might have something called a DEM account or a device enrollment manager account, or it could just be your admin account. If you start doing that, all these things show up as personal enrollments. And there's a whole list of things that you want to, there's a link right there. You'll have access to the deck at the end of this. You can click that link and it'll take you to the difference between what corporate and personal is. And you want to make sure that you're not enrolling things as personal if they should be corporate. And also you can block personal enrollments. And if you do that, then these devices won't even enroll. You'll just start seeing a bunch of failures because you've blocked personal enrollments from happening. So you don't want to do that. Do the top three for your existing devices that I showed there. Don't do that bottom one. Now for the new devices, so we got a brand new shiny device that we just purchased from whoever our OEM is. What's the best way to do that? So the best option is what I showed earlier in the demo video, is using Windows Autopilot with self-deploying deployment profiles. There's no primary user associated with that device. That's going to be important later as we start going through the rest of this presentation. And what that means is that anyone that signs into that device can install whatever application they want from the company portal. You can use that device, you can give it to someone else, you can have multiple users sign into it. It's just a very dynamic method of enrolling and deploying a device. You're not locked into one single primary user. Anyone can use the device. The experience works well for everyone. But the second best option, if you can't use Autopilot, is to use a provisioning package with Windows Configuration Designer. In this scenario, it operates very similar to Autopilot with self-deploy profiles. There's no primary user associated with the device, so you have the same benefits with using Autopilot with self-deploy. The big difference here, though, is that you have to put the provisioning package on a USB stick, and you got to plug it into the device at the out-of-box experience. So there's there's more manual touch to the device, whereas with Autopilot with self-deploy, all you got to do is just get a network connection. As soon as you get that network connection, Autopilot profile downloads, we get enrolled in Intune, and then Intune starts downloading all of the settings and applications that you've deployed. Your third best option is to use Windows Autopilot pre-provisioning or user-driven deployments. With both of these scenarios, you end up with a primary user associated with that device. And that primary user is the user that signed in and enrolled the device. So during the out-of-box experience, as you start going through it, you're going to get a window that comes up that says, sign in with your work or school account. The end user will do that. they get flagged as the primary user. And that causes problems when you start giving the device to a different user. So if that primary user leaves the organization, or maybe these are student devices and students go to a different grade level and the old devices end up with new students, and you don't want to reimage these things, well, the primary user might be that old student. Or the primary user could be an IT admin, the person that originally set up the device. And if that's the case, then the company portal doesn't work. I mean, you can open it, but you can't install applications because the applications are there. It's only allowed for the primary user that's associated with the device. And so this causes a lot of problems. I've had a lot of IT admins in a lot of the districts here in California come to me and say, hey, I need to remove the primary user from these devices because we can't use the company portal to self-service apps. And so this causes a problem. And so I've got a script that handles a lot of that. So if you have that problem, post something in the chat or something, and I can talk to you about that a bit more. So when we compare both of these, which one should we choose? Which scenario should we be in? And so with intra-hybrid joined, start there first. So existing domain joined devices with no plans to reimage, that's where you're going to start. Most organizations start right here, and that's perfectly fine. If you have domain computer objects and they're required for authentication to resources, that's typically wireless. So a lot of us with wireless today are most likely using a username and password to sign in. And so that's generally considered what we call a MS Chat v2, or it's PEEP MS Chat v2. If you're a networking guy, you probably understand, or gal, you probably understand what that is. And so what that means is that in that scenario, you have a domain computer object that is authenticating via radius to your to your network. And we look at that object and we say, yep, we see it in the radius list, or radius is looking in your on-prem directory, I should be more clear. Radius will look in your on-prem directory as the source to find if the device object is there. We see it. We then look at your username and password. Okay, that looks good. The device can get onto the wireless network. That's how most organizations, or at least most K12s that I talk to, have their wireless configured today. And if that's the case for you, then you'll still need to use intra-hybrid join. But there are alternatives to doing this. Like, you don't have to do MS Chat v2. You can use something called EAP TLS. And EAP TLS allows for certificate-based Wi-Fi. So you can push a user cert or a device cert to the device, and that will allow for authentication. There's also other mechanisms that are the different wireless providers like Aruba, Cisco ICE, and various others. They have solutions as well to help interact with Intune, Entra, and to get these devices that are cloud joined onto your network. So this shouldn't be a hard blocker, but it's going to be an initial blocker until you figure out what your wireless is going to look like. And so you'll probably be an intra-hybrid join just because of this for a bit until you look at reevaluating your wireless and how you want to access that. Now, note, intra-hybrid join is a transitory state. This should not be long-term. We don't expect people to be here for 20 years. We do expect people to be here for maybe a few years. But as new devices come in, you should look at moving those over to intra-join. So intra-join is the long-term recommendation by us, and we're seeing a lot of customers now as they're purchasing new devices, they're autopiloting those devices, they're getting them into Intune, they're getting them into Entra, and the experience is going fairly well for them. But they're in this, transitory state still. They still have existing devices that are intra-hybrid joined, and they're going to be there until those devices age out. So for this scenario, like I said, new devices or newly reimaged, and like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with intra-joined, users can do most common tasks as domain joined machines. So we can get access to our on-prem resources like file shares, remote desktops, printers, and we have a solution called Universal Print. I'm not going to spend a ton of time in this presentation talking about it, but Universal Print allows you to access your on-prem printers from the cloud. And then we have user and devices that the user and the device can be managed from anywhere in the world. So during COVID in 2020, the customers that I worked with that had adopted Intune prior to the pandemic and everything shutting down, they didn't really have too many problems managing devices. Whereas a lot of those that did not move, they had some really bad issues 6 months in when Windows stopped activating and users needed to access applications and other things from the network. They weren't getting updates. And that was because you couldn't access the on-prem network. And so some districts were telling parents to drive the kids or drive the device in the car to the parking lot, get within the Wi-Fi range, and wait. Wait for the KMS server to activate Windows, wait for updates to install, wait for software to be deployed. It was a mess. But those that had already adopted EntraJoin, they didn't have that problem because Intune could push everything, and the activation of Windows can all be done through something called subscription activation. So it was a much better experience for those rather than those that had to deal with this with all those domain joined devices during the pandemic. It was a much more difficult process for them. Now, the biggest challenge you're going to have is migrating from domain join to EntraJoin requires a reimage. Now, if you do some research on the internet, you might come across some community solutions that help with migration. I'm not going to. What I will say here is that these are not supported by Microsoft. The community solution provider, whoever that is, could be a partner. They might help you with that support, but you can't call Microsoft and say, "Hey, I use this tool that I found on GitHub or on the internet or whatever, and it's not working." We're going to tell you, well, you need to reimage the machine. And so if you have user profile data, user documents and stuff like that, and you lose them, that's going to really be on you and the solution that you downloaded. So in these kinds of situations, you want to back up the data, reimage the machine, and then have the user sign in and copy their data back or put it up in OneDrive or wherever you might want to store that. Okay, so existing device enrollments, what does this look like? I'm going to kind of go through this a little quick because I'm going to be running out of time here pretty soon. But I've got screenshots in here on what this exactly looks like, and I have links to the documentation that you can go do to actually set this up. So I'm going to speed through this a bit. What I want to just call out here is that as you go through Entra Connect or Azure Active Directory Connect, there's just this radio button. As you go through the tool, you click on Configure Hybrid Azure AD Join, and then Windows 10 and later. You're not going to do anything lower. You're not going to use Windows 8. You're not going to be doing Windows 7.
Richard, you just went on mute.
Okay, how long have I been on mute for?
Just like 5 seconds.
Okay, so someone put me on mute. Okay, yeah. So you'll just go through the wizard, configure hybrid join, click on. You want to make sure Windows 10 or later is set up, and then just go through the rest of the wizard. When you do this, what you'll see eventually, it's not going to be immediate. What you will see eventually is that in Entra, when you look at all of your devices, you'll start to see this join type that says hybrid Azure AD join. And so the devices will start to flow in, and you should see them with, you won't see it on the screenshot here, but there's a column further to the right that'll give you a registration date. You want to make sure that that date is filled in. It shouldn't say pending. If it says pending for everything, then there might be a problem, or you're just waiting for the user to sign in. So when you set this up, I give it about a week to let your users are going to have to re-sign in for the EntraJoin to finish. And so oftentimes that could be that they may never re-sign in, until they have to reboot. So until they install Windows updates, that's typically when they re-sign in. So it could be even up to a month before those devices that show up as pending show up with an actual registration date. So don't be too alarmed when you see that. But when you start seeing dates in there, like the timestamp of when the registration happened, that's good. That means that the device is completely registered and everything's working the way it's supposed to. Okay, so group policy. So you've done the hybrid join. Now we need to use a group policy to get the device into Intune. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing you do is you actually need to go into Intune because we need to set who can actually enroll devices. So we go into Intune, we click on the Enroll Devices tab. There's this automatic enrollment box. You click on that. Then we have this MDM user scope. A lot of people have this set to none or some. If it's set to some, that allows you to put a group in there that's allowed to enroll devices. But if you're trying to do this automatically through hybrid join and group policy, you're going to have a bad time because the enrollment doesn't actually happen through a computer account. It actually happens through a user account. And so your users are the ones that are signing into their machines, and they're the ones that need to be able to enroll because we enroll as that user. So in this scenario, if you have some set, you need to make sure that all the users that are enrolling devices are in that group. And then you have to manage that group. So as new users come in, they need to go into that group, so they need to enroll devices, and it becomes a mess. So the easiest thing to do is just to set this to all. And then if you have concerns about, well, I don't want all devices to be enrolled, or I want to put some restrictions, there are enrollment restrictions that you can set in Intune to restrict like personal devices, to restrict platforms, like, so if you don't want iOS or Android or Mac, you can restrict those through enrollment restrictions. Don't limit the scope here to be too small, because then you're going to start to see errors and things aren't going to work the way you expect them. So once you've done that, then you go into group policy. There's an MDM folder that you'll see as you go into GPO. Again, I have the link to the docs. It'll walk you through all of this. But you'll click into there, and then there's this enable automatic MDM enrollment that you want to set up. Just enable that. The most important thing here is that you want to select user credential instead of device credential. A lot of people get confused. They think device credential. I would think device credential if I was doing this for the first time. But the reality here is that when we do enrollments, we actually do them under the user context in most cases. And so in this situation, you want to set it up for user credential, and that'll get the devices to start to enroll once they get the group policy. So you do both of those. That works for the scenarios without Config Manager. With Config Manager, we've got it's the same kind of experience here. The difference is that you go into the Config Manager portal or the console, click on Cloud Attach, and then there's a wizard that you'll walk through to Cloud Attach your devices. It's a very straightforward process, and then that gets the devices into Intune as well. Links here on how to do all of that. It's very straightforward once you follow the docs. Okay, new device enrollments. So I talked about Autopilot, and I talked about Configuration Designer. If you're new to Autopilot, this is the diagram of what it looks like. Effectively, what happens is you buy a device from your hardware vendor. They will enroll the device IDs or the device hardware information to the Windows Autopilot service. From the Windows Autopilot service, we do a sync between Intune and Autopilot. And then the IT admin, aka you will create an Autopilot profile that will go into Intune. Once the device gets delivered to your employee, it's most likely going to be you or your team. They will then go through the Autopilot process. Once they turn the device on, they get it connected to the network. The profile comes down. We then get it into Intune, and then Intune does all the heavy lifting to get all the applications and settings. That's a very quick, high-level view. We've got some links to docs and some other skilling snacks and things like that that you can take a look at if you're brand new to Autopilot. What I want to talk about are the scenarios for Autopilot. So I mentioned earlier, self-deploying mode, Azure AD join, or Entra join now. This is the recommended mode. That's what I do for just about all the customers that I work with. If you don't want to do that, or if you're fine with user-driven mode, the big difference here is primary user. So we get a primary user associated with user-driven mode, but we also have the end user has to type in a username and password through the out-of-box experience. If you're giving these to adults, you're probably fine with that. If you're giving the devices to students, you probably would most likely want self-deploying mode. I personally provide I like self-deploying for everyone, but some people might not like that. So user-driven mode would be my second choice. Third choice would be Autopilot pre-provisioning. And then I would never recommend anyone set up user-driven mode with hybrid Azure AD. The reason for this is because this takes at least 30 minutes to enroll the device, and it's much, much more complicated to configure. There's a lot of moving parts here because we have to enroll the device to your on-premises domain. And it's not as simple and easy to do as it is with just a traditional domain join from something like MDT or Config Manager or any of the current imaging tools that we have out there. So this takes much longer, and it's more prone to errors. So if you've tried this, if you're using it today, you probably have went through some of those issues trying to get it all set up and working. But it's much slower to do. So self-deploy, user-driven, one of those two, pre-provisioning. Pre-provisioning is fine. It works. I mean, to me, it's like this is like 1 and then 2A, 2B. You can do either user-driven or Autopilot with pre-provisioning. Both of those methods are basically get you in the same state. It's just that with pre-provisioning, we will pre-provision the applications for the user ahead of time. So that's going to make their experience faster. But at the end of the day, they're going to end up in the same situation. It's going to be a user-driven deployment with a primary user associated with the device. Now, you might have heard something called Autopilot device preparation. That's where we're headed with Autopilot, but right now it's not really education friendly. I don't find that it meets the needs for what we need within education. We're working on some of those things, and so that's going to take some time to get there. So it's in preview right now. You can look at it and start playing with it. But for me, self-deploying is probably the best method. Okay, GPO versus Intune. So we've got configuration service providers. You might see the term CSP if you're into like Microsoft licensing, CSP is cloud solution provider. Well, for us managing devices, it's actually a configuration service provider. So you might see this term as you start working through Intune. I've got a link in the deck that goes and explains what configuration service providers are. They're the underlying technology that configure a Windows device via Intune or third-party MDMs. And GPOs and CSPs do similar things, but at the end of the day, we're just really modifying registry settings for the most part. We're going to the registry, we're just changing something from a 1 to a 0, or we're putting a string in. That's really all a GPO does, and that's primarily what a CSP is doing. They're really not doing much different. But in the on-prem world, GPO, as we know, that's king. So anytime we have a policy that we set through GPO, that takes precedence over anything else. Meaning local policy, if you try to set something locally through like gpedit.msc and you set something there, GPO, excuse me, GPO will always override that. Now in the cloud world, CSP is king. There is no concept of GPO when we talk about Intune. However, we can't have conflicts, because if we're in a hybrid scenario where we have group policy coming down to a device and then we have Intune setting additional policies, sometimes you might not be aware that I've got a policy in GPO and I got the exact same policy in Intune. What's going to happen when we conflict? Well, what happens in that situation is that GPO will always win over the configuration service provider. So GPO is the source of truth. However, there's a policy called MDM wins over GP that's in the settings catalog. You can search for it. And that only works for policy CSP settings, but that will override whatever's being set by GPO. So you can click on that link. That'll explain what that policy does. But our best practice is that you do not want to focus on migrating all GPOs to Intune. You undoubtedly have at least a decade, maybe 2 decades plus of GPO debt within your environment. And you don't want to bring that baggage over. You don't want to slow things down. I've had customers tell me that, hey, when I run a GP result and I take a look at policies, I can see in there, because it shows you the time, how long it takes for policies to process on a machine. It takes multiple minutes, and some customers it's like 5 minutes just to sign into the machine. And oftentimes you have like scripts and things like that run, and their group policies are just slowing things down, and it's making the experience worse. So it's best to just start a clean slate, look at what you might need. You can pull some of the stuff over, like some of the things that make sense, but if you've got something that you have no idea what it does, try it out without it. This is a great time to reset your policy management. So don't bring that over into. Now for recommended device configurations, we have created settings and guidance for one-to-one devices, shared devices, student users. I have a link here, aka.ms/edudc. That will take you to a GitHub repo that I've created that has the ability for you to import settings directly to your tenant for the best practices that we have learned over the years. I've got a video, it's fairly long, about an hour long, that goes through exactly how to configure this, explains the settings, explains why we do what we're doing. That video is up on YouTube, you can click on that. But I know these settings aren't all inclusive, so if you've got some feedback, you can open up an issue on the GitHub repo. Now imaging. I'm going really fast. I've got a couple minutes here. I got to get to the other presenters, so I don't want to shorten their time up. But from an imaging standpoint, as I mentioned at the beginning, Intune does not have a native imaging solution. What we recommend, what you'll see from various places is, just use autopilot and then use autopilot reset, or wipe. If you go into the console and under a device, you'll see there's a wipe button, there's autopilot reset. Either of those things, they basically are kind of doing the same thing. There's some differences between them, but more or less, it's pretty much the same kind of process that is doing the reset of the machine, but it takes more than 30 minutes. It could be longer depending on how fast or slow the device is, but it takes at least 30 minutes to get this device reset. So if you've got to give a device to a student or teacher real quick, it's too long. MDT doesn't support Windows 11, it supports Windows 10, but when Windows 10 goes into support at the end of this year, you're not going to have MDT anymore, so that's gone. And Config Manager OSD still works, and we're still supporting Config Manager. But if you're moving away from Config Manager and all your devices are now in Intune, well, you're not going to be imaging with Config Manager because you got rid of that. And imaging, as we know, is going to be still necessary because you're going to have break-fix scenarios. You're going to have, just student devices just go up, and you can't connect back to Intune to get the reset command in order to wipe the device. And your OEM recovery media might be 2 or 3 years old. So that I got to wait for that to update. I got to install that, and then I got to update it. So it's just, what am I supposed to do? So what we've done on my team is we've created this process called it's not called FFU, but it uses something called FFUs. And what an FFU is the full flash update media. So effectively, it's a file extension .ffu. So like when you use a WIM file today for imaging, you have a .wim. In this case, we have a file extension called .ffu. And so it's this full flash update. Effectively, what we're doing is we're taking a hard disk and we're taking a straight snapshot of that hard disk. So it's a full sector by sector copy of a disk. And so in this process, what we've done is we basically given you the ability to have a Windows image that has the latest cumulative update, the latest .NET cumulative update, the latest Windows Defender platform and definition updates, the latest version of Edge, the latest version of OneDrive, the latest version of Office 365 apps, the latest version of the drivers from your OEMs, whether it's Dell, HP, Lenovo, Microsoft. These are the latest drivers. They're not just some old enterprise cab that's been sitting up on their website for 5 years or whatever. You get WinGet support. If you're not familiar with WinGet, it's a command line utility you can do to search. You can use that to search for applications. Install whatever application you want from WinGet. If you want to find Chrome, you want to find Adobe products, you can just go search for WinGet, install the applications locally on your machine. We integrate that directly into this process. So you can go find whatever app from WinGet and install it into your image. We have ARM64 support for our latest and greatest Copilot Plus PCs. You can bring your own drivers. You can bring your own apps. So if you've got some big, honking app like AutoCAD or Adobe Creative Cloud, you can bring that along. You can install it as well. We've got custom WinRE support, unattended XML support, and we have Windows 11 24H2 support. And then coming soon is Windows Server support. We just added Windows Server support in December, so you can use this for your servers as well. And the best part of all this, it takes 2 minutes to apply the image. After applying the image, going through the enrollment status page for autopilot and everything, total elapsed time is approximately 10 minutes. It all depends on what you're deploying through Intune. But we can get devices imaged quicker with this method than any other method that I've seen. And it's all because we're using these full flash update files that it's very similar to Ghost. Remember Ghost from a long time ago? A lot of us have been around for a while, and we started with Ghost. This is very similar to that. And it was really designed for OEMs to, on the factory floor, to get these images applied to their machines quick, because they've got to image thousands of machines, in a day, and they need to do it quick. And so that's where the FFU process was born. It was for manufacturers. But when I saw this, I was like, our K12s aren't very different. In the summer, a lot of K12s are imaging thousands of devices to get ready for the next school year. So we're no different in education than an OEM would be. And so that's why we developed the process. So we can automatically download the latest release of Windows. If you want to get this, aka.ms/FFU. I've got a deep dive video. It's 2 hours long. Don't watch the whole thing end to end. You're going to fall asleep. Watch the first 15 minutes. And that'll get you through the quick start. And then you can look at the different sections. I put all the chapters together. So there's different sections on how to do apps and drivers and stuff like that. Go to those chapters. It'll help you out. And I also just put some things on Reddit. I lurk on Reddit. I see what people write about a lot of the stuff that we do. And so I've got a couple of little things here from some folks on Reddit that have found the tool. They've installed it, they use it, and they've said some good things, and they've recommended that to the community. So you can read up on that if you want. Call to action, get your devices into Intune. I didn't mention anything about this earlier, but there's a tool called Endpoint Analytics. Get that configured, because it's going to help you with your Windows 11 rollout. And we didn't talk about Windows 11. I didn't talk about Windows 11. Dale's about to talk about it here in a minute. But this will help you with your Windows 11 rollout. There's a report in here that shows you which devices are ready for Windows 11 and which aren't. Get this set up. Doesn't cost you anything additional. There's no extra licensing you have to purchase. Get that set up. And then also leverage your free fast track benefit. If you have 150 paid licenses and you want help with getting Intune set up, you want help getting to Windows 11, Fast Track can help you with that. I believe Soft Choice can also help if you need some assistance there. Work with Fast Track, work with Soft Choice, work with us. We'll get you set up with Fast Track. They can help you get Intune and Windows 11 set up. Bunch of links here that have changed since CITE 2023, 2024. You can click on those later. The last thing I want to mention, and then I'm going to be done, is next week, next Thursday, February 6th at 11 a.m., I'm going to be presenting probably much slower. I won't be talking as quick here, I hope not. But I'll be speaking about Windows 365, Intune, and Azure Virtual Desktop. So if you're using VDI today, if you're using Citrix, if you're using maybe VMware Horizon, there's a lot of things that have been going on with VMware in the last year or so. You're looking to maybe refresh your VDI, you maybe use an RDS today. Come to the session. You can learn from me. We'll talk about what Windows 365 is all about. We'll talk about Azure Virtual Desktop, the differences between the two. I think it'll be a good session. So come check that out if you're looking to offer VDI to your users. And then lastly, endpoint office hours. So every other Tuesday, so next Tuesday is our next session. I have an endpoint office hours that me and my team provide. And so any questions you might have around Intune, we also give the latest updates around endpoint management, any things to watch out for, end of service or end of life on different products, different things. We talk about all that stuff. It's every other Tuesday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. And so I'm on there. The rest of my team's on there. I got a link here to register for that. And with that, I will turn this over to Dale.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to jump in here. So we're gonna do a quick tour here of Windows, and then we'll talk a little bit about Copilot and Surface as well. So hi everyone. I cover Windows and Education, US, Canada, and Latin America. I do all Windows except Surface. So Melanie will jump on here in a little bit, talk Surface, but I do all the work with our partners, Dell, HP, Lenovo, etc. So a couple of key points I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. First of all, Windows 10 end of support is in October. So you've got now less than 8 months, 9 months, math is hard, less than 9 months from today to move over to Windows 11. You can certainly buy extended support if you'd like. The price is pretty attractive. However, that does not get you extended support on Office apps. It only gets you extended security updates on Windows. So that is an option. But again, I want to make sure everyone knows about this date, October 14th, and that you have a plan in place to move to 11 by that time. There's a bunch of data on this slide. We'll share this slide with you. All sorts of links on why Windows 11 is a desirable upgrade. For me, the big data points that stand out here are 58% reduction in security incidents. Obviously, so as education is the most attacked vertical in the world, having a reduction in security incidents is always good. And at the bottom, 80% reduction in help desk tickets. So both of those are saving time and money fundamentally for you and your district, because you are not focused as much on security breaches and on help desk tickets, and you can actually do something else with your time. So I want to make sure everyone's aware of this. The other thing I'll comment on here before we move, just to make sure there's no I'm super transparent. There's no Windows 12 being discussed by anyone that I'm aware of. I've pinged all sorts of people in engineering, etc. So this idea that, hey, we shouldn't upgrade to 11, we'll just wait for 12, seems like a risky approach. Just because we're not discussing Windows 12. I mean, again, I did ping engineering and say, what's the status on this? When's it coming? They're like, we're not even talking it. So know that ahead of time. And then secondly, anytime you have a date like this, we should be, everyone, we should try not to wait until the last minute, right? When you look at the numbers worldwide on the number of devices that need to move to 11 and are currently on 10 and cannot upgrade, so they need new devices. There's just not enough. There's not enough manufacturing lines available right now based on current inventory planning from the manufacturers to get you what you need if you wait. So if you buy now, or you buy, before, let's say, get a PO in before the end of June, you're probably okay. Or when the fiscal year resets on July 1st, if you want to do it on July 2nd, you're probably okay. If you're waiting, there's going to be some challenges there the longer we wait. All right, so that's Windows 11. It's a great product that's more secure, but I just want to make sure you have a plan to move with that. Let's move on now to the next slide. So we're going to spend a little bit of time later in the presentation, not me, you're going to get an expert on Copilot talking. I did want to frame Copilot a little bit for you, because we're going to be talking about Copilot plus PCs a little bit, and I wanted to frame that up. So Copilot is our AI, is branding for our AI solutions. There's a lot of Copilots at Microsoft offers. Some of them are free. So what you get in Windows, right? So Copilot on Windows is free. So if you have a Windows device, you get the Copilot features built into Windows for free. The Copilot's built into Bing and that you can leverage there is also free. There's definitely some paid Copilots as well. And then Copilot Plus PCs on the far right is our way of talking about PCs that can basically do the AI computations at speed on the device itself. You don't have to be connected to the cloud in order to do it. So these are 40 TOPS plus devices, so trillion of operations per second to be a Copilot Plus PC and fit there. So those have largely been announced at CES. The Intel-based versions, the Qualcomm-based versions came out in the fall, so they're already in the market. So these are in market, and as you think forward about, okay, we need to move to Windows 11. Most people on this call probably have a refresh schedule in place for student and teacher devices. What I would encourage you to do is think about what's coming, because the ability to do this computation on device and not on Wi-Fi is powerful, and probably a feature that your teachers will need quickly, teachers and admin. You probably don't need it today, but when you start to look at the apps that are coming that are going to be able to tie into this feature to be able to do it on board. For example, as of right now, M365 apps, so Office apps, are not tying into the NPU on a Copilot Plus PC. If I were a betting person, I would say that's going to happen pretty soon. Now, I don't have any insider knowledge here, but you would think that Microsoft is going to build this technology in so that it works on our Copilot Plus PCs that all of our partners are launching, right? So is that a feature that all of your students or staff are going to want to be able to have way better battery life and do all that stuff faster? Probably. And then what about all the third-party apps that are coming that are going to tie into the NPU? So as you think about the future and what you want to buy before October to move to Windows 11, we'd love to talk with you in more detail about Copilot Plus PCs and where they make the most sense. They're not going to be for everyone. They're probably not going to be for students, but certainly making sure you future-proof yourself a little bit there would probably be valuable. And then I want to talk about one announcement. This was just announced about 2 weeks ago. I have a video here. I think in the essence of time here, everyone, we will send you the link to this video. This is called Project Spark, but it really shows you the power of what a Copilot Plus PC can do for K12 teachers in going from lesson plan, which is just a document, to actually being able to teach a compelling lesson with great sources and great links and videos and content, and then the creation of quizzes or some sort of assessment. Copilot, this app, and in a Copilot Plus PC takes this from hours of work to just a few minutes to get all that put together in one spot. So it's very powerful and compelling. Only available on Copilot Plus PCs. But I will whet your appetite, and we will send you the link due to time, and then I will hand this over to Melanie.
Hey, I only get off mute there. Hey, all. So many familiar faces and names on this call. So nice to see you all. If we haven't met in person, I'm sorry. I try to get around California as much as I can. I'm in lovely San Jose today. Here, let me pull up my deck real quick and talk a little bit, expand a little upon what Dale was just sharing. So let me know if you can see okay. Are we good? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a yes. So just to talk a little bit about what Dale mentioned, I do feel like we're getting to this time with the Windows 10 end of support, and I know that a lot of the customers I've been speaking to have been nervous about possible tariffs, also thinking about Windows 10, and so a lot of folks are and so the possible supply issues that might be coming because of that. We have so many Windows 10 devices out there, and I know that there will be quite a lot of refreshes in the next coming months. So between that and tariffs, they're looking and talking about, okay, let's actually take care of ourselves sooner rather than later. And with that said, we want to make sure that folks are not buying a bunch of devices that may actually possibly be kind of obsolete here in the next year. That's how fast AI is going, and it's like exponentially increasing with the amount of information. I mean, it's hard to even follow in the news, everything that's going on. So let me see if I can't get over to the next slide. So when it comes to Surface, we think about everything that Microsoft creates from a software perspective is created on Surface. So it truly is the device that kind of highlights the best of your M365 investment over the entire stack. And when we think about how important security is, really, that goes all the way from chip to cloud, which is how Surface thinks of security as well, right? We're thinking of security before you even boot up your device, for example. And as we go into more and more AI solutions, that security piece is going to be essential and even more important than it was before. So what Satya has mentioned here is that, which is really important and kind of helps me kind of think about it. Everyone is also nervous about all of the processing costs, all of the increase in resources, data centers, everything that kind of it's a resource intensive motion that we're going into right now. So we're going to have so many applications that will have these local models, these local language models, that where processing on device is good enough. It won't need to hit the cloud and come back, for example. But there'll be so many smaller, cheaper ways, more effective ways of utilizing AI, and these AI experiences can be private, secure, and like I said, on the edge. That's how we think folks will scale everything that we're talking about. And there's so many solutions being developed right now. We were just talking about Project Spark, which was announced a couple weeks ago, but there will be more and more and more that will actually require an NPU on your PC. That's what we consider a Copilot Plus PC, is it needs to have an NPU. I saw in the chat, by the way, somebody asking about when Intel might release that. I will just highly implore you to possibly go to that specific website that I put in the chat on our announcement tomorrow morning, which is 10 a.m. Eastern. So I know that's real early for us. I will be just rolling out of bed here at this hotel with coffee, just so that I can kind of see what that announcement all entails. But that I can't share anything more. But please, if you're interested, definitely pay attention to that and go to that website at 7 a.m. tomorrow. We're really excited about what they're going to share. Truly, we do feel that AI is going to be very important, not just from a cloud perspective, but all the way on the edge as well. It will help everyone scale. And in terms of an NPU, so what these devices have is a system on a chip, and the NPU is the neural processing unit. I think of that as it really does help with specialized, it's going to be doing all of the specialized processing tasks for AI. A lot of that, though, think about some of the specific processing that audio, your video, your camera, that type of thing does, that drains a battery really fast. And we all know this throughout the pandemic, right? We had so many people that were like, oh my gosh, my device is only lasting like an hour and a half or 2 hours because I'm on just constant Zoom or Cisco or Google Meet or Teams calls like all the time. And that does drain a battery. What's nice about these Copilot Plus PCs is that NPU takes all of that away, kind of offloads all of that so that your CPU and GPU can manage all the other tasks that you need to do. So it makes it for not just an amazing battery life. I can actually utilize this device for 2 days, usually, like traveling. 2 days will get me by, and then I can plug it in. It's great to not have your device plugged in. That also makes it so that your battery lasts longer and degrades quite a bit less than it would have. So lots of great benefits with these Copilot Plus PCs, but as we look into thinking about if you are refreshing devices, I just don't want you all to get a device where a year from now you're like, oh, I can't do that. I don't have the right device that can do that. Copilot plus PCs, we really do feel are the future. And right now, for example, Surface, three out of every 4 Copilot plus PCs being sold today is a Microsoft Surface product. We are basically the creator of this this specific technology, and so we do feel like we're going to probably be strongest at it, and so that's probably why we have the most sales in that category. And then just to kind of go over briefly the portfolio, again, this is what we have right now. We have an amazing announcement tomorrow. We will be having another announcement in March. So a lot of great new information coming. And if you do have some refresh motions in mind, I would just love for you to reach out to me. I can get a demo unit of these products sent to you. And then for testing, that's really what I would love you all to do, is be able to test a device. I just need an opportunity. If you really are refreshing and it's 100 units or more, I can definitely send you a device to test for about 60 to 90 days. And I would love to do that for you. So we can meet about it, and I can kind of tell you a little bit more, and even do a kind of more of a roadmap discussion if that would interest you. So with that said, I think I've used my time. I tried to talk as quick as I could, and then that's it. I will pass this over to Andre for some awesome Copilot information.
Thank you, Melanie. For those who don't know me, I'm Andre Mitchell. I'm your Copilot technical specialist. I'm based out of San Diego. And what I'm going to be touching on is some Copilot information for education use cases. We've made some announcements. This product is always becoming, it's always evolving. So there's always new information to share. So I want to, with the time left, quickly hit some things in the education space around Copilot chat. First, we launched at Ignite, one of our conferences, about Copilot plus agents and how Copilot is a new user interface for AI. So we've added some of these agents functionality into the Copilot, even the free version of Copilot chat. So that's why I wanted to share this piece, and then we're going to touch on this a little bit later as we go through this content. We've also been talking with our customers and getting a lot of feedback and developing what's called the AI adoption curve. So it begins with access. You leaders need to decide how to provide this access to this AI. The ROI, it can mean ROI based on a financial standpoint, not as much on the education standpoint, but there is that efficiencies and practices that you gain in giving people back their time. So kind of that return on investment of people's time to get some of these things done when it comes to AI, like Copilot. And then governance, just making sure that you are securing your environment, your data estate, and that you're staying compliant and using all the AI practices, the best practices, to kind of crawl, walk, run as you start to roll out AI in your environments. So one of the things we like to do is we like to keep you on your toes. We keep changing the name of this product. Right now, in its current iteration, we are calling it Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. All right, so this used to be called Biz Chat. It was Bing Chat at one point, but now we are calling it Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. So this is the free version of our web experience that you can have for chatting, not to be confused with the Microsoft 365 license that can then open up all the productivities of your environment by grounding that information with your meetings, your data, and the people that you collaborate with. Chat plus agents plus IT controls is a key thing that we want to focus on here. One, I saw on a previous slide the word commercial data protection. We used to call our free experience commercially data protected, which was not as good as our enterprise data protected. We've since upgraded that, so you do have the enterprise data protection, so you can apply your labels, sensitivity labels, and your policies within the free realm as well. We also added the ability to add agents even in the free experience at a consumption pricing model. So there is a pay-as-you-go model for the agents if there's a use case for you to use those agents. But the main thing is our chat, which is both supported on the web. It's also supported in mobile app that gives you that free, secure AI chat powered by GPT-4o and web grounded. Now, for Copilot scenarios in education, we want to talk about some day in the lives, really, is kind of the gist of this. We're going to show you kind of a scenario for an educator and also even a student that is able to use Copilot. But also just from a higher level, helping educators and administrators thrive in education. We kind of look at the before AI and now what's coming with AI. You know, whether you're doing your personalized learning, your content creation, your planning and collaboration, and trying to be efficient with your operations and also gain insights in what you're doing as educators. And now we add with AI the ability to quickly have the assessment formulation using Copilot, the efficient policy planning using Copilot, the course orchestration, the workforce planning, the agile budget management, and district-wide reporting and communication, and monthly board meeting management using the tools and the features from within Copilot. We see some of this will delve into the paid version, but a lot of this can be done with the free version, just being able to ideate and prompt and get to those answers and results that you would want to see in the classroom or even supporting the classroom. So then, from a day in the life of, we have this, what an educator could have, just using the Microsoft Copilot chat. With the benefit of saving you time, almost half an hour a day, which gives you that time to now, create more lesson planning, increase your communication. But you can see just following this kind of day in the life, starting from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., using all these elements within Copilot chat to catch up on what you need to focus on what's most important, but also getting started in drafting and spending less time on that ideation phase of getting a draft in place, and then personalizing that learning and having resources and links to what that information is that you can then leverage as you build upon what you're developing for your classrooms. And the same with the student, what they might use Copilot for. We know they're using AI. We know they're using some kind of AI tool, just like when the calculator came out, people were using calculators. Now it's a matter of how do we leverage that AI and actually reference prompting when developing lesson planning. And instead of just evaluating answers, we're looking at what is the student using to get to that answer and why? What do they pull from that information when they're using Copilot or any other AI tools to prompt? But now as IT admins, we know there's challenges in protecting the data estate, because what Copilot does is it opens up a quicker way to search within your environment and on the web. So there are certain things we see if you're looking at going from the free version to the paid SKU, and you want to open up the all the benefits and features in that mindset. We know there's a little bit of anxiety because you don't know where your actual exposure is. So we offer some things with data security controls that you can leverage from a best practice standpoint. And we kind of have a core and a best-in-class experience. So getting started, we also offer you the opportunity to run a quick assessment in your environment to see where you are from a Copilot standpoint. If you're ready to deploy, you can deploy our 365 paid SKU. If you're not, well, we give you the ability to lock down how you can use Copilot to search. You can create your own whitelists with restricted SharePoint search. And then we take you on this other path to say, well, while you're in this lockdown mode, you have these abilities to now look at adding the core and the best-in-class experience for your data protection. And then once you've done all that, now you can disable the restricted SharePoint search. And one of the things that's really cool is we did add the ability to have SharePoint Advanced Management included as part of that Copilot license. Now we talk about baseline, core, and best-in-class. We just want to leverage all the tools that are available to you to set up conditional access policies and remove that risk, but also control big data sprawl. So if you have a lot of inactive content archive things that are in SharePoint, you can actually pull that information. And that's going to dovetail into when we go into the agent experience and how we leverage that. Now, utilizing the usage reports is good to know where this is landing in your environment. So even with the free experience, you can see reports as far as what is being adopted and what's being utilized. So at a high level, you will be able to see a readiness and adoption impact and learning tab capability as admins. And you can see if you're using the paid SKU, what people are leveraging from the 365 apps, but also in that same place, you would see who's using the web experience. So you have visibility into what's going on into your environment. Now, I mentioned we've been changing our product naming and how we get to it. I want to now take you kind of through some scenarios and seeing how it looks when you're actually using it. So getting started, we have the Microsoft 365 Copilot app. We've now went live with this new URL, m365copilot.com. So you can actually go there, and when you log in with your work credentials, you're now protected, and you'll see that in the getting to know your Copilot experience. So this green shield here is your protected badge, letting you know that you're signed in with your work account, even if you're doing a free experience. And all that's different in that experience is you wouldn't see this toggle here. It will just be one a canvas for you to start prompting. This gives you the ability now to know that you're protected, your data is protected, and you have your suggested prompts, your ability to start your prompting in that text box, ability to add files to that prompt as well. I get a lot of questions from ChatGPT users. Can we add files even on the free experience? Yes, you can upload a file and have it summarized. You also have the ability to look at what agents are available if you're providing those. And the key thing, though, is that protected badge and the fact that if you're signed in with your work ID, you have that enterprise data protection, not to be confused with commercial data protection. So at just a one-page screen, what is enterprise data protection? One, our searches are not linked to your individual user accounts. Your prompts and responses are not saved, and your chat data is not used to train our large language models. And knowing that Microsoft is viewing your data. So it's important to just know that distinction, that when you're using Copilot, whether you're paying for it or not, as long as you're using your work account, that you have that data protection. Now, just want to show something else around user adoption. So here I want to just take you through some things that I see as a challenge with our customers is getting people using Copilot in a way that they get value. So here's a blog that I like that and I have this on my last slide, some of the links to this, but really what I want to show you is the prompt gallery. And we have a AKA URL, aka.ms/prompts, and this takes you to this landing page where you see all these prompts that are available. The reason I show you this is you might not have known about this. This gives you a lot of ideas on what you can do with Copilot and give you quick videos that are quickly, easily digestible on how to use Copilot to get the best benefit. And now what's even better is you can go in and start filtering on different applications, but even the job type. So here I can actually come in and check faculty, or I can check student. Note it said 18 plus. We are workshopping and piloting a 13 plus model, but for now it is 18 plus. But having the ability to go in and look at suggested prompts, you can even bookmark those prompts. So you can save those prompts for use for your own usage later. You can come in here and you can actually click a prompt and you can try it right down on the fly within the interface that you're intending to use. In this case, I'm going to copy this prompt and I'm going to use it in my Copilot page. Go to my Copilot tab that I've already loaded. And I can get to it from office.com/chat or the previous address I gave you. I have my panel that I can close, and I can run this prompt right here in my environment. In this case, I'm drafting a fun lesson plan for photosynthesis for 5th grade. So it's going to give me that information back, but also it's going to suggest follow-up prompts. In this case, it's saying, do I want to add a quiz at the end? Do I want to include videos about it? Do I want to suggest books for further reading? So what's great about this is I can continue to iterate on my prompt and add more information to this prompt to get to a better prompt. I can even ask Copilot to help me correct my prompt and get more out of it. So quickly, I can just quickly add videos to it, send it, and now I have links to videos right within the same output. Now, I know we're getting close on time. I want to quickly go into another experience, which is agents. I do want to highlight the fact that I give feedback because giving feedback is the best way for our product team to know what's landing and what's not landing when you're using these tools. So now, the reason why I'm going to agents is you may have a use case where you want to put an agent in front of your users and really control this experience, whether it's within your own collaboration tools, and you can actually have certain things that are created. Maybe you have an FAQ, maybe you have information that you want parents to access or something like that. Having an agent that you can build both internally and externally is one of the secret sauce elements of our platform. In this case, I'm going to take you through what it looks like just building a quick agent in SharePoint and then leveraging Teams to quickly access that information. So quickly going into SharePoint, clicking a couple items, creating that Copilot agent. It's going to automatically create that. I have a link that I can share. Now I can go into a Teams chat or I can send it to a user specifically. And now I have an actual agent that I've added, my own bot, essentially. And all the data access policies that I have are going to be leveraged for me, and anyone I share it with is going to be leveraged for them. So you can see just how quick and powerful it is that you can bring an agent in and get it up and running. You also have the ability to create your own agents using our Copilot Studio. And all this is all part of what this whole experience is when we talk about the user interface for AI. Now, I mentioned some links at the beginning. I want to stop there and just show this last page. These links are live. I'm sure there'll be a way for us to provide this content to you so you have the access to these links. One of the links that I did focus on here was that prompts link, but you can see we've curated a bunch of education-specific links that can help you on your Copilot journey. And with that, I'll hand it back to Diana and the rest of the CITE team.
Thank you so much, Andre, Dale, Richard, Melanie, really appreciate it. I know there's been questions in the chat, but I think we have like 3 more minutes left. If anyone has any feedback or questions, feel free to let us know. If not, I'll turn it back over to Crystal and Will.
Will, anything? This is Christina. Anything, Will, on your end to share?
Hi, this is Shireen. Will had to jump off, so I am taking over. How is everybody doing? From what I heard, this was a great session. As far as soft choice to share, just make sure if you have any questions or if there are some questions that were in the chat that didn't get addressed, you can text them or email them to CAMSA@softchoice.com. I think Will mentioned earlier that everybody from Microsoft and CITE, we have a kind of a consortia that monitors that inbox. And so we will get answers back out to you as soon as possible. Just want to thank everybody for their participation. I hope you found the information informative.
Yes, thank you so much, Shireen, Diana, presenters. Thank you so much for the information. And again, we will be sure. Thank you, Shireen, for getting links to the decks. We will have everything available to you all. Our goal is within a week. Please feel free to reach out to myself if you get my messages by way of CITE through CAMSA updates. Feel free to shoot me a message as well anytime if you are receiving my emails. Thank you all. It looks like Mohammed has a question. Real quick before we hop off.
My question was, do we get any certification for attending this meeting?
No, there's no available certifications that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you everyone so much. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Soft Choice and Microsoft for an amazing event. Hopefully everybody had some great intel to move forward. Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.